Hey guys, I'm Buckwsr here. Thanks for watching this video. What you're about to see is the project that came together over a period of several months. What I thought was just going to be a sump gasket replacement turned out to be a partial engine rebuild. I'd like to know what you think as you watch my methodology, how well you think it's going to hold up, and you think if it was worth it. I hope you can learn something from the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you soon. Hello everyone, I am Buckwsr, putting the do into do-it-yourself, and you are joining me today on a repair project that at first was very embarrassing to me, and I was not planning to videotape it or to share it with you because I was a little embarrassed. Because it's a repair job that I did already once a year ago, and it has not held up. It's failed. So we're working on a Craftsman lawn tractor. This is the YT4500. It's got the twin cylinder Briggs and Stratton engine. And a year ago I replaced the sump gasket. That seems to be a problem with these engines. I did my homework. I watched the repair videos that are out there. I got the Briggs and Stratton original replacement parts. I followed the installation guide to a T, and this tractor belongs to my neighbor. I did it last spring, and by July or August it was leaking again. Now you know how these tend to leak. The sump gasket blows out. You can see here I've already removed the engine, and most of the leaking is taking place on the left side. Call it the left side as you're sitting in the driver's seat. And interestingly, I actually found, as I was taking it apart, pieces of the blown out sump gasket. See that? So I was pretty embarrassed that the repair job didn't hold up and that we had to do it again, until I went online and realized there's a lot of other people that have done this repair job by the book only for it to fail. Some guys have said that it fails like immediately within 45 minutes runtime. Others guys say it does it within 8 hours. It blows again and starts leaking oil. Of course, then you know what happens. It leaks onto the muffler and burns and smokes and it smells horrible and makes a real mess. So I was relieved to realize that I was not alone in this failed project. And I've got some creative ideas that I learned online that I'm going to try. They are unconventional. They are not by the book. You may criticize me for attempting them. But hey, this tractor's got about 900 or close to 1,000 hours on it. Doesn't really owe us anything. And I'm not doing this repair job again. This is it. Last time. So I'm going to try some things that are a little unconventional. In addition to the gasket material blowing out, I've also noticed, look, these bolts are no longer tight. They're loose. Now I torqued them to spec. This is I can take this out with my fingers, at least over in this spot. Now the bolts that come with the kit already have sealant on them. This here too, you know, these, they're only fit. I can take them out with my fingers now. So they didn't hold. Now I'm going to be honest, one of the things I did not do by the book was to chase those threads and clean them out like it says to do, because I didn't have a thread chaser, but I have got one now and I'm going to do that. But you'll notice that they didn't hold. So one of the things I'm going to do is chase those threads like you're supposed to and clean out the old material. But I'm also going to beef up the sealant and put some better sealant and not just rely on the sealant that comes from the factory on those new bolts. I have some other things that I'm going to show you that, as I say, are a little unconventional. But let me drain the oil, let me take it apart, clean it up a bit, and then I'll show you a couple of things that I'm going to do. Just a few other tips if you're doing this job for yourself. I did not actually take the cutting deck down. I had to remove the belt off of the off of the PTO, but I did not actually have to take the deck down. Now there's a wheel that sits up here on here that I did have to take off because it was in the way of getting to the crank bolt. So I've moved the electric PTO out of the way, set the parking brake, and it will take the slack out of the drive belt and pulley. You can take that down. Then 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, 4, and your engine comes down. So he's up here on a homemade engine stand, which is a bucket with a hole drilled in the top, or I guess it's the bottom and then inverted. And so yeah, here we go. Let me do some of my cleanup and disassembly, and then I'll bring you back in for the creative techniques, we'll call them. In my case, this is the model Briggs & Stratton 445877. But this is a common problem on these guys, and I feel relieved to know that I'm not the only one who's done the project only to have it fail. Well, we're going to give it one more shot. All right, I'll talk to you again in a little bit. Well, people, I cannot explain this to you. But in addition to this failed gasket, you got some metal parts are moving around in there. Look. How could I not have been aware of this? The connecting rods for the one cylinder is completely broken. Wow. That is not what I was expecting. Little bits and pieces. Because as far as I knew, the thing was running. Was in running condition, just shooting oil all over the place. So the plot thickens. We're going to fix this, or are we going to allow the scrap guy to have it? Alright, well, I certainly wasn't expecting that. Let me think about this. See what we can do. Bye. Well, guys, have you ever jumped into a project, started it, and then let it sit for a long time before getting back to it? You know you have, so I don't feel so bad. It has been literally months, many months, since we filmed that previous segment on this Briggs & Stratton oil pan gasket job, and the engine has been sitting here for months and months since that time. And I got some of the other components up here, the oil pan, and here's the tractor still covered up. I had even gone to the extent of purchasing some of the parts we need, and according to the date on this package, that was May 19th of 2020 that it was shipped, and now it is the late November. So it's been a while. We got the connecting rod. I purchased that. What else do we get here? The head gasket, oil pan gasket. I purchased a tool, some of these thread chasers, because I want to chase the threads out on that oil pan. Here's the crankcase, oil pan gasket, oil seals. So this stuff has been sitting. You can see how dusty and dirty it's gotten, but it's time to get back to it. And I think my next step is going to be to clean out this engine. Our pieces are still sitting in there. I got to clean that out. We got to get the piston out of the one side, replace the connecting rod. So a lot of work to do here, but I'm glad to finally be getting around to it. Well, as I'm cleaning up this engine, I discovered a reason that some may find to bail on this project and scrap the whole thing. And that's this crack here in the engine block. Do you see it? And yeah, it's cracked. I guess that's no real surprise that I found that, since our oil pan bolts had come loose, since we lost one of the connecting rods and that's shattered. So perhaps it's not surprising that we would have discovered this crack. So, but instead of abandoning the project, I'm just going to do something to try to repair it, like JB Weld or something like that. Why shouldn't I? It's just a lawnmower, and what have I got to lose? So we're going to give that a try, but I thought I'd show you how the project has gotten a little bit more complicated as we move along. Well, I have spent considerable time doing some cleaning on this engine block. It's when we discovered the crack. And while I have it here, I'm going to clean out these threads with this thread chaser. Now these are 5/16 bolts. So I'm just going to work on these for a while. In and out. Take it in as far as I can go, which is there. And just try to clean these out as best as I can. You know, when we go to put this back, you know, the new bolts come with thread lock already on them, but I'm going to beef that up with some you know, thread locker of a more substantive type, because I just can't afford for this to happen again. And I think these guys coming out was these guys working their way out was the reason we ended up with the problems that we did. So I'm just gonna spend a few minutes to make these as clean as I can get them with this thread chaser here, and take my time and make sure we do this right. Well, it's about time, I guess, to start taking off this cylinder head and the removing the piston on this one side. All right, so no gasket on this side, just doesn't look like there was a gasket, just the sealant. All right, got a little oil in there. And next we'll have to take off these rocker arms and take out the push rods. Alright, don't really need to remove them completely, just enough to pull out the push rods. You can see they're different. The intake aluminum, I guess the exhaust steel, deal with the heat better on that side. Okay, so our next is, well, I'm going to sop up some of this oil before it makes a big mess. Then we'll undo the bolts for the, well, even before we do that, we can undo the intake bolts here. Nope, that's not it. There's a bracket bolt right here. And then two bolts on the intake manifold. And we'll be right back. So we got 5 head bolts. one. Sounds like my battery's dying here. Yes, indeed. Well, we almost got them out. I'm just making sure they're all the same length. They appear to be. Alright, he recapacitated himself for one more bolt. Alright, so there's that. And cylinder head comes off. We'll save him safely to the side. Probably can pull that gasket off. Don't want to lose those dowel pins. There's one. That one seems in there pretty firm. Okay, so that's that. We got him off. Now we've got to be able to push that piston up and out from inside. All right, trying to push the tap them up lightly. That should be enough to grab them. And pull it out. There he is. There's a broken connecting rod. Well, as I'm driving the pin out of the piston to remove the connecting rod, I see that piston is itself compromised too. You can see it breaking off right here. See that? So yeah, it looks like I'm gonna need to go back online to the parts list and see if I can find another piston for this. Well, hopefully it won't be too expensive. Well, guys, I decided to bring the engine inside because the weather outside is not real conducive. It's just too cold. I don't like being cold. So I'm in here at my desk. Now this room, which I affectionately call my office, also serves as my wife's soap room. She makes soap. So at the other end of the desk is a huge stack of blocks of homemade soap. Shelves are lined with stuff. Racks over there with soaps. And we kind of just share it for our respective projects. So I finally got the parts that I need, and I'm going to put you up on this tripod and we'll carry on with our project. Since the piston and the piston rod and the connecting rod that we're replacing are for the number 1 cylinder and connect behind the number 2 piston rod, I'm going to take down the going to disconnect the connecting rod from the crankshaft, and that because the instructions say to put in the number 1 piston first, and that's the one that we got to replace. So this number 2 is actually in the way. So I'm going to take apart the connecting rod here, and we'll push that piston up and out of the way. We'll have a little bit more room to work. New piston and connecting. So here it is. It came in the mail today. Briggs & Stratton in 6 languages, 7 languages, 8 languages. Briggs & Stratton original service parts, repuestos originales. Those are the only 2 I know. Looks like they even have Russian down here. But this is part number 793560. it's the piston. It would be the same whether you're doing piston 1 or 2. The connecting rod also, by the way, would be the same, just oriented reverse for the other one. Okay, here he is. I gotta read the instructions to see that arrow, if that arrow goes flywheel side or PTO side. I don't really remember. But fortunately, we get the instructions about putting on the rings. The rings, this is our little clip. Here are the rings. So I'm going to put the connecting rod onto the piston first. After I do that, then we'll put the rings in and insert it into the piston. Okay, so I found the directions that come actually with the connecting rod that remind us that the arrow on the piston must face the flywheel side. So there's our arrow, so it's got to go this way. And then we also know the number 1 on the connecting rod, since this is the number 1 cylinder, has to be facing the PTO side. So we would see that. So this has got to go in there like that. Here's our pin, and then our brand new clip for holding it in place. So let's see if we can get this put together. Some lubrication. Alright, so let's make sure we got this right. That way. This way. Slides in very easily. Now, clip's gonna go up in here. This could be challenging. Not sure the best way to do that. Maybe a screwdriver. Alright, I found it. Actually, I find just pushing it in with a screwdriver is better than the needle nose pliers. Alright, so there he is. Okay, so connecting rod and piston are joined and secured, and now I'm going to put in the piston rings as our next step.
Now it's out of this bag. I'm going to weigh it.
Alright, I'm going to install piston rings.
Are you talking? You videotaping?
Yeah.
Okay, shut up.
Oh, it's fine. Okay, so I got the rings and I got the instructions. That always helps. Plus I have the old piston as a guide. So here we are. We're starting with the oil control rings. Some oil control rings consist of 2 thin rails and an oil control expander. Install the expander first, then carefully twist each rail over the piston to fit on each side of the expander. So that's what we're seeing right here with the 2 thin rails and the oil control ring in the middle. Now this, I don't need to use the piston ring tool. We'll get that in there. That's very simple. And then the 2 thin rails would be this guy right here. Okay, got that underneath the oil control ring. And then this one we'll put on top of it. And there we go. Now I'm just going to take a closer look to see. Okay, here's the opening on the bottom one. Opening on the top one's 180 degrees on the other side. So I'll try to make sure I do that here as well. It's hard to see. Wow. There's the one here. Top one's here. Alright, like that. Okay. Now we got two more rings. And the instructions: use the ring expander tool to center the install the center ring in the middle groove of the piston. The center ring has two paint stripes. It's that guy with the two stripes, and must be installed with the pin stripes to the right of the ring gap. There's the ring gap right there. And I do have the tool, and I'll assume that it's needed. I don't really know for sure. Might be able to do this without it, but okay, that's the center ring. Use the ring expander tool to install the top ring in the top groove of the piston. The top ring has one stripe and must be installed with a stripe to the right of the ring cap. So like so. Alright, and it doesn't say anything about where to space them. This guy's got the space here and the space here, so they're about 90 degrees apart. Don't know if that's by design or just how it ended up, but we'll mimic that somewhat. Alright, so the rings are in the piston, and now it's time to see about getting them into the engine block right there. Okay, so here's my piston ring compressor. I've not used this baby in a while. But we'll give it a shot. I don't know if this is a very good one or a piece of junk cheap one. I've had it for a long time. I've used it maybe once or twice. Seems to work. Okay, so it says, according to our directions, to tighten it in there and then loosen it just a little bit so that the piston can spin inside the ring compressor. And now I think we can attempt to put it in. I did lubricate the cylinder as well as the piston before assembling this. Remember, our arrow has to face the flywheel. It should be that way. Alright. Going down few love taps. Tighten it just a bit. Let's see, that top ring is not in. Squeezing it in my fingers. Just about got it, I think. There it is. So I was reading the directions. It doesn't say anything about putting a thread lock on these or anything. It says assemble connecting rod cap to rod with match marks aligned. Okay. Torque screws to 100 inch-pounds, which is not too terribly tight. And in fact, the torque wrench I got doesn't even go that low. We'll see what we can do. I probably want to put some lube on that crankshaft. Alright, so I'm going to finish tightening these down. Then I will connect the connecting rod for piston number 2. And we'll have both of our pistons in and give it a few rotations and make sure it's all moving smoothly. My next step is to install the camshaft. So I'm going to put some lube on these tappets and slide them up into place. And I'm not going to install the push rods until later. Alright, there's those two. Wow. There we go. All right. We'll put some lube on this guy. Now, there's a notch on the top of the crankshaft, and that notch is going to correspond to this groove into the crankshaft gear. It's got the little dot right there. So that has to correspond on the camshaft to, where is it? You know, there's a dot, an indent right there. Maybe that's it. Maybe these two dots aren't it at all. I think it's this indent right here that would need to correspond to the dot right there. That's got to be it. Just like that. That's what I'm going with. I think that makes a little more sense to me. All right. Okay, there we go. Sure you can see that. Probably can't. That's probably tough to see, but dot here corresponds to the dot there, and that should be it for proper timing. Okay, excellent. I am ready to reinstall the cylinder head, clean the mating surface of both the engine block and the head. We'll start by putting these dowel pins in place and then hang our new gasket on there. New gasket, part number 693997, would be the same for either side, and you can only put it on one way because it won't fit the other way, so that makes it idiot proof, which in my case is very important. I am going to put a little bit of high temperature thread sealant on these head bolts. I don't know if it's entirely required or necessary, but I'm going to do it anyway because I can. Alright, so now we mount this guy up on there, like so, and we'll start by putting the bolts in. We just won't tighten them down quite yet.
Why not just? What?
Yeah, I don't know if the thread sealant's required or not. It looked like one of the bolts had some on there. And guess I can do it any way I want. Right? Since it's mine. And I'm free to do it as wrong as I want to. Alright. Get them started by hand. Then get a little help from the front, the power tools, just to run them in. And I think I'm going to need an extension. Let me see how far I can get in there. Yeah, I'll need an extension. Okay, so that's it. Now we got to torque them down. And the torque specs on this cylinder head are 220 inch-pounds, which is 18 1/3 foot-pounds. You just take 220 and divide it by 12. I may have a little bit of trouble torquing these because the engine's not stationary, you know, it's sliding around here. I might need to get some help holding it down. And there's a certain torque pattern to these bolts. 1, 2, 3, 4, that one inside, and 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I'm going to torque those down and we'll be good. Let's go ahead and install the push rods now. Remember, your aluminum is for the intake side and the steel is for the exhaust side. I'll certainly want to check the valve clearances before we put the cover on, which on this engine are between 4 and 6 thousandths. Flashlight helps. So here's my feeler gauge 5,000th, and that feels pretty good. It's either between 4 and 6 thousandths, so I'm not going to change anything. That feels just about right to me. Well, putting the valve cover, rocker cover back on, and I got the part, the gasket, which is 690971, but it comes with these instructions. It says, if the engine was originally equipped with breather and rocker cover gaskets, use the gaskets supplied with this kit. If engine was not, order Briggs & Stratton silicone sealant part number 100106, not included. Use a 3/16 continuous bead of sealant on the mounting surfaces when installing these parts. Mounting surfaces must be free of oil and grease before applying sealant. Well, this did not have the gasket, so I bought this uselessly. I will save it for another project, and I'll just use the sealant as instructed here. And I'm just using this gasket maker, black, whatever. The other thing about this is this rocker cover has our engine make and model and type and code on there, and you want that to face upward so you can see it to reference it later. I mean, it'll fit on upside down and work just fine. It'll just make it a lot harder to see that information. So we'll put him carefully in place. And get the bolts started. Like so. I don't have any torque specs for these, and it's probably not that big of a deal. They don't have to go down too tightly. So that much with the nut driver by hand, and then maybe just a little bit more with the small ratchet, and yasta. We'll leave it at that. Okay. Real good. We are ready to prepare the sump cover to go on there, the sump pan. And I'm going to install a new oil seal, 795387. So want to get this lip where it rides oiled up, and also the edge of the seal itself. And it's not goes flush, it goes a little bit lower, and there's a lip down there that it will stop at. So we don't have to worry about going too far. Just got to be careful. Now I am going to, I've got the gasket. I've got the replacement gasket right here. I've got the new bolts, and I've got the instructions, which include the torque sequence, and as I told you, I am going to do some things a little bit unconventional, because the bolts came loose last time, and that was the cause of our problem. The bolts came loose, and gasket blew out. So one of the things I am going to do, because I can, is, in spite of the fact that they've got thread locker on these bolts, that's not of any consolation to me. I'm going to use some of the red Loctite, the high strength red, and hopefully that will do a better job than the thread locker that comes on these standard. I'm going to torque them probably a little bit more than what the torque specs call for. And there's one more thing I'm going to do that it says not to do, but I'm going to do it anyway. Like up in here it says using a metal knife, scraper, or abrasive such as steel wool or buffing pads will damage the aluminum mating surface, resulting in leaks. Well, I'm actually going to deliberately try to scratch up this surface and the surface on the oil pan sump pump, the sump, in a hope that it will give the sealant, the gasket compound, and the gasket itself more of something to grab into. So that may strike you as unconventional or maybe even inappropriate. But like I said, I did it by the book last time and it failed, so we're going to try something a little bit different here. Alright, I don't know if that's going to make any difference or not, but it's worth a try. Alright, now we'll clean that up. A little solvent, and put this cover on. Okay, so I'm ready to I'm ready to do this. I have applied silicone gasket maker to both sides, the engine and the sump. I've got the gasket right here, and I've got my bolts here, and I'm using red Loctite, the high strength. Looking here at the instructions, final torque value is 325 inch-pounds, which they want you to do 1/3, 2/3, and then full. I'm going out on a limb, and I'm going to torque it not at 325 inch-pounds, but I'm taking it up to 375. So I'm going to do it in 125 inch-pounds, 250 inch-pounds, and finally at 375 inch-pounds, which is roughly foot-pounds 10, 21, and 31. So I'm going to torque it a little bit more. That's my plan here now. So let's get moving here. We will lay our gasket on. I've got a couple of dowel pins. I guess I should stick those in. Where are they? One there. One there. How's that look? Looks reasonably okay. Well, I want to make sure my crank seal is lubricated with a little engine oil, and I'm going to put some of that on the crankshaft. And also on the seal. And we'll just put that on very carefully. I've removed the oil pump from the sump pan, so that will be out of the way. We'll add that later, and I think now I'm ready to drop this on. Alright, so finally got it to go on okay. A little wrestling with it, but was this governor arm getting hung up back here, but I think I got it now. Okay, so let's add our bolts. Everything looks okay. Meeting up as it should. Alright, now we'll just run them in a little bit. Alright, that's pretty good. Alright, now we use a torque wrench or a three-step process. So what did we say we were going to do? We were going to do 10 foot-pounds, 21 foot-pounds, and 31 foot-pounds. And here is our torque sequence. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's quite a diagram to follow. So there's 10. All right. 1. 2. 3. 4. 9. And 10. Alright, stage 1 complete. Next, we're going to 21 foot-pounds. Okay, I'm not sure at what point the camera battery went on us, but we're on our 3-stage torquing process, which I've adapted to 10 foot-pounds, 21 foot-pounds, and finally 31 foot-pounds, and we have our torque sequence that I'm trying to follow. So here we go for number 1. Oh, that's great. 2. Oh, that's great. You see the hands of my helper? She's great too. Here's number 3.
Try to do that one.
Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. Number 7. Number 8. Number 9. And number 10. And with that, we've got our engine put back together. All that remains now is to take it out to the tractor and install it up on there again. Now actually I got to put the oil pump back together. Do that next. Alright, the only thing left to do while we have the engine up here is to fix that crack. You remember? Now that I've put the sump pan on, you can hardly even tell that crack is there. It's not very noticeable at all. You know, it's just a hairline crack here and extends like up to here. So I want to use some JB Weld type reinforced putty, but I first wanted to use the drill and the wire wheel to just kind of rough up the area. Which I did prior to turning on the camera. So now we just got to take the putty and prepare it by kneading it. It's got a darker color on the inside and a lighter color on the outside, and it's just a matter of kneading it until you got a uniform color. These gloves are too big. Don't like using them. What if I do this with my bare hands? You guys aren't gonna like report me or anything, are you? Wait, that's a lot easier. I will wash my hands with soap and hot water as soon as we're done. It doesn't really have to look like much, does it? And supposedly this stuff is absolutely rock hard within 3 hours. How's that look to you? Well, that's just going to have to be enough. All right, with that accomplished, the engine's put back together. I put the exhaust pipes on it, which is easier to do on the workbench than when you have it on the tractor. And we're just going to let this sit overnight, and then hopefully we'll be ready to, you know, put oil in the crankcase, finish a few more trim parts that need to get put on, shields and whatever. I probably should open up that carburetor bowl because it's been sitting for 6 or 8 months. Make sure it hasn't gummed up in there. So I'm going to do some of those things, and I'll get ourselves an oil filter. So do all that kind of stuff. Hopefully we'll be ready to fire this up and keep our fingers crossed. So I will see you when that moment comes. All right. Oh yeah. Okay, so I'm going to bolt down the engine. I'm not going to connect any PTO to it or the drive belts, nothing. I'm just going to get it on there, make the minimal connections necessary to see if we can get it fired up. Okay, I think we're about ready to fire this up. Now, I want to crank it a few times without it being under compression, just to spin it a few times with the starter motor, so I don't have the spark plugs in yet. Doing that hopefully will also prime our fuel system and fuel pump. Now, not wanting to use the old 9-month-old stale gas that's in the gas tank, we're going to try to pull some fresher gas from this small can here. So we're going to replace those fuel lines anyway, and I've done that up to this point. Obviously I don't have the cover on, I don't have the air cleaner assembly up there, or air filter. That's okay. We just got to see if we're going to get anything to happen here. So let me see if we'll fire up at all. I mean, just spin it, see if I get anything. That feels pretty good. All right, so good. It's spinning. Sounds really smooth. I got oil in there. Let's put the spark plugs in and see if it'll fire. All right, I'm going to give it a little bit of a head start with the starting fluid. Not much. Fired. Yeah, that was good. I don't think I've got any fuel getting pumped up here. Not sure what's going on with that. So it fired briefly on the starter fluid, but don't think we got any fuel in the carburetor bowl yet, so hang on. It's not pulling gas from this gas tank for some reason. I had poured a little down the throat here of the intake. So we're making some progress. There we go. Hey, that's pretty good. This smoke is the oil burning off of the muffler. So once that burns off, we should be running clean. But the engine sounds really good to me. I don't think I've got the governor linkage hooked up right because I only had one throttle, one speed. The throttle lever did nothing. So I've got to figure out. I had some confusion about hooking this up down here. I think I got it mostly right, but not exactly. So I got to look into that a little bit more. But it did fire up and sound pretty nice when it ran, didn't it? It sounded really, really good to me. Oh wow. Well, there you can see we've got it running, and I feel really good about that. It really sounds good to me. Obviously, I still have some more work to do. I don't have the shroud and air cleaner assembly on. I haven't hooked up the pulleys or anything on the PTO, so I still have some work to do. But I think this video has gone on long enough. I want to thank you for watching, and I encourage you to please leave me a comment or a question. Do you think it was worth the time and expense? I probably got over $200 into it. Do you think the repair job will hold up? And what are your thoughts on some of my less conventional repair methods? I would love to hear from you. So thanks for watching, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next video. Remember, only you can put the do into do-it-yourself. See ya.